This is Tim.
And this is Brandon.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Brandon in California somewhere. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm real good.
It's been a long time since you've been on any podcast that I do.
It has been.
For people who might not remember, Brandon was one of the co-founders of Deconstructing Comics along with Mulele and me. And, of course, Mulele is still in the Tokyo area working on his comics, but Brandon has moved around several times over the years.
I have. I think you're a little bit too gracious. I wouldn't call myself a founder of the podcast. It was really all your idea.
It was Mulele's idea.
Oh, was it really?
Mulele said, let's start a podcast. It's a way to promote Spider Hag, which it wasn't. It didn't work out that way. I mean, after we'd been doing it a while, I thought, no, it's not. It's just another thing to promote.
We did review Spider Hag at first, right?
We talked about Spider Hag on the podcast more than once, back when I was doing it. And then I started doing the English Study podcast too, and then I didn't have time to work on Spider Hag anymore because I was podcasting all the time. And 15 years later, that's ever more the case.
In 15 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, crazy. All right, so the comic this time. I'm a little confused about this title, because it has in big words Jellied Feels on the front, but in smaller lettering at the top it says Ataraxia Digest number 0, Winter 2020. So maybe that's Jellied Feels is just the title of the issue of Ataraxia Digest, I guess. And what the heck is an ataraxia? I don't know.
I don't know either. But it looks like this is a collection. None of this stuff is dated, but it looks like it's a collection of things he's done over the years.
Right. So this is all comics by Joseph Hewitt, who is a Canadian who lives in South Korea. And he used to table at Kaigai Manga Festa here in Tokyo back when they had that. And that went away a year or two before the pandemic. The lack of that was not because of the pandemic. And way back in July 2017, Mulele and I talked about his Snow Cone City comic on Critiquing Comics 115. But yeah, I was looking at the table of contents page of this one, and it sounds like these are comics that he did for like anthology comics or this or that, and some of them never actually appeared anywhere. And so he's just collecting together these short comics that he's done over X number of years.
Yeah. Can we talk about the table of contents real quick?
Sure.
So he has a brief description of what each story is.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them I thought were appropriate because they're brief enough. And then others I felt like reading the summary that he had in that table of contents kind of took away from the story itself, like
spoilers.
Yeah, a little bit of a spoiler, right? And I also think it could have been a little bit appropriate to put in the date that he created it here.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Because there's definitely a difference in style from story to story. Some look like he has matured, and others look like this might have been something he did many years ago.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's something he can add when he gets this printed. Since there are no comic conventions to sell this at, it doesn't exist in print yet. It's only digital. And I'll link to the place where he's selling it digitally, so people can take a look at it. It's worth the $2.
And then back to the title.
Yeah.
I gathered some meaning from Jellied Fields and the cover itself. Did you?
Well, yeah, so we've got a kind of bird character standing in front of shelves full of what look like jars of jam, and they're labeled with emotions like sads, worry, ennui, bitter fruit, and one has a brain in it. So, yeah, it's some kind of, feelings that have been turned into jelly. Whatever.
You've heard the term feels before, right?
Yeah.
Like you just have these emotions, and that's what all the jars are labeled.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he is represented by this character in the front and is looking back at his history and thinking through all the comics that he did and how they make him feel. And that's,
that makes sense.
Like that, the anthology itself is the cabinet full of all these emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, let's just kind of walk through these stories. I mean, it's 30-some pages, 33 pages, but it reads pretty quickly. And most of these stories I found pretty entertaining. This first story, it's just 4 panels. Love Monsters #1, Admitting the Obvious. And he's got an anthropomorphized cat person here who is thinking I'm a monster. And he mentions in the table of contents that, well, her name, Misty, was from the name of, his sister's cat.
His sister's cat, yeah.
And the guy with horns comes in. Misty, are you in here? Misty? And you see her from the back, and like there's maybe light from a window, or from the doorway shining on her. And she turns around, she's got a mouth, and hard to say, a mouse in her mouth. And it says, munch, munch. So, okay, well, she's a cat, except that she's not a cat, except that she's a cat. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to draw from this story. What did you think of this?
As the introduction story, I thought of it as like an introduction to the style of the comic. It is a really quick punchline for the story. Not that much of a surprise, right? Cat eating a mouse. All right. Okay.
Not really, I guess, except that since she's, human proportions, it does look a little odd that she's got a mouse sticking out of her mouth.
Yeah, and then the first panel makes you think that she did something to another anthropomorphized animal, like killed a person or something like that.
Yeah,
and it was just kind of like this regular little mouse.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a good one to pick as far as establishing the overall tone of the story, of the anthology and the style of it. When I read through this one, I was like, oh wow, this is kind of like all the independent comics that I used to read in the 80s and the early 90s that you would only really get exposure to if you were at a comic book convention and you met the artists themselves and they had this thing printed like 500 copies out of their own pocket. Have you ever, like you were in the States in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever have that kind of experience?
I'm trying to think. There was like one attempt at a convention in Cedar Rapids in the 80s. I don't remember that I went to it, though. I think I might have been away at college by then. Oh,
okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, it kind of took me back. So I kind of felt like the guy on the cover. Looking, these emotions came back. I remember being a teenage kid and looking at, wow, it's not just Rob Liefeld and Arthur Adams and all the big comic book artists here. You can have the little guy who just wants to tell his funny little stories and sell that directly to people. And at that time, that was really, really different. Because I was really only exposed to Marvel and DC up until that point.
Yeah. Yeah, true. To see like homemade comics being sold was really unusual back then, and now it's like any convention that you go to, back when we could go to conventions, you see all kinds of comics like this.
Yeah, and then the whole advent of self-publishing has become such a normal process for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Where
and
back in the day, you had to have some either deep pockets or some support out there.
Yeah, there was a lot of potential cost involved. I mean, like this, he just put it up on the internet and he's selling it. And I mean, I don't know what it costs to get into the sales platform, but certainly probably better than spending money to print 500 or 1,000 copies.
Yeah, it also did remind me of the whole zine culture that was kind of big in the 80s and the 90s, where people would create comics and they would just go to a photocopier. And then they would staple it in the middle, and that's what they would sell as their comic. His quality is higher than that.
Well, yeah. This is all in color.
His style is reminiscent of that whole culture at the time.
Mm-hmm. So the next story, called Thrilling Space Adventure Comics, with an X, in the table of contents he mentions, and this applies to actually quite a few of the stories in this comic, that it's something from everyday life, but he turned it into science fiction just because it would be more fun to draw. So, it's on some alien planet with a humanoid and a creature that looks kind of like some kind of insect, like a praying mantis or something.
Praying mantis, yeah. That's what I got.
And they're tidying up the grave of the grandparents of the praying mantis guy. And they're talking about that, and then the praying mantis guy says Shazbot, shout out to Mork. Right. Realizes
he's wearing a similar suit.
Yeah. I think Mork's was red, but
red,
kind of the design
with a white stripe.
So he got the wrong grave. Cleaning the wrong grave.
So I had some different expectations for where the story was going to go on this one too. I thought the praying mantis had lured the guy to the planet. Because this praying mantis, you can't tell male or female or whatever. I thought that this is maybe the graveyard of their ancestors, because that's where they would consume the male and drop the eggs inside the body, and I thought that's what was going to happen.
That would be decidedly not drawn from everyday life. It's not everyday human life.
Well, it could be. I mean,
everyday praying mantis life
all the time.
But not something that the author experienced. He didn't get eaten by a bug on an alien planet. Right.
Yeah. I would say that the story is pretty well drawn. The storytelling is from panel to panel. You know exactly what the characters are doing.
Oh yeah,
it's not a lot of action, but there's no confusion over what the setting is or what they're doing.
No, it's very clear. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's a little amusing. Whoops, to make that kind of mistake, and kind of a sensitive thing, it's involving your late ancestors, and oops, I guess somebody else's late ancestors are here.
Yeah, and then I won't spoil it. But yeah.
Then we have a one-pager, which there's no title on the page, but in the table of contents, it's called Hasbro Marketing Secrets Revealed. And it's about designing of, like, basically G.I. Joe weapon vehicles, in this case based on a Segway. And I thought this was kind of funny. I
thought it was amazing.
One.
Yeah, it was hilarious. And then the panel at the bottom looks so much like what the action figure cards look like. just because like the explosion in the back is the right. Of course, his style of the character is a little bit different than what you would see on the action figure, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's totally awesome. I like that one.
Okay, then we have a longer story, and this one, again, it's in kind of a science fiction setting. It seems to be the future. It may be on another planet. I'm not sure. But it's called Modern Love, and it's centering on this woman who wants to have it all, a good relationship and a good job, and things don't go the way she expects, and then she kind of turns it around at the end. But, the alien setting is not integral to the story, but it makes it more visually interesting, and adds some humor to it in places also.
Yeah, suggestive.
Yeah, in one position.
Vacuum cleaner, that was hilarious.
One page, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I felt like the story was a little bit derivative. I don't know what the timeline is when it came out, but the suicide booth.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in the story? That's in the story, right? Yeah.
Right.
Suicide solution. I believe that was a concept that was in Futurama.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. If he did it before Futurama, that would be amazing, and they probably owe him a lot of money.
Yeah, sue Matt Groening. Or Groening. I never know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, it says suicide booths are found in nearly every street in the year 3000 in Futurama. Nice. Roughly the same size as a phone booth. So that it looks very similar, and the purpose is entirely the same. So if that's where he got it, then I'm like, eh. But if he created it, I'm like, wow, it's amazing.
But yeah, I think the story has a bit of a message, kind of.
Oh yeah, right, totally.
Yeah, the way that she comes back business-wise is a little awkward, but yeah, she sees what her error was in the past, and she's taking a different path now.
Yeah, and it's almost like a message like she had to lose everything in order to get everything she actually wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was pretty much all aspects of her life that were kind of screwed up, right? Her job, her relationship.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I don't want to go into too much detail about it because I want people to read it. But
yeah.
Then we have a one-pager called LOL Cat. And I simultaneously thought this was funny and didn't get it. I mean, the idea that there is a cat applying for jobs and being told we don't hire LOL cats at this company, that was funny. But I didn't quite get the last panel. Was that meant to be funny, or what do you think?
So the version of the comic that I have has a blank page.
Well, yeah, when I read this comic on my phone, some pages were blank, and then I read it on my computer, and all the pages were intact. So I know you said you were reading this on your iPad, so that might be the problem.
Let me see if I can pull it up, but I don't want to delay any comments you have on it.
Now, this one is in black and white, and yeah, the style, again, feels a little different. Not much in the way of grays in this one either. There's a little bit of shading in the background, but a lot of it is primarily line art.
Yeah, I'm looking at it on my computer. I still don't see that page. So I'm missing that story. I see Uninterrupted Service, and then I don't see the story after that.
Huh. Okay. Well, let me see if I can share my screen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you see it?
Mm-hmm. So he's treating him like a felon?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's humorous.
Yeah, yeah. And the layout is kind of interesting. That last row, there's a big blank space before the last panel. I'm not quite sure. Well, it could be that this might have appeared someplace else, and there was something placed there, like indicia or an ad or something. That might be why it's blank.
Huh.
Although with blank space there, and then that last panel, it's interesting. It kind of impacts the way you read the comic because it makes that last panel feel kind of. Like the positioning of it feels like it's supposed to emphasize the gag somehow.
You remember? I think it was I don't know where it came from, but it's an anime, a manga, kind of like a common joke that they use where they do the 10-10-10.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a pause where there's no response from the person who is supposed to be responding.
Right, and you just see 3 dots in their word balloon.
Yeah. And that's kind of the feeling that I get with this page. That space there is like, well, what do I do now? I'm not saying anything. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so that one's funny. And then, a 2-pager called Uninterrupted Service, and this, again, seems to be... Well, I don't think this would have happened in real life, but the bus setting feels kind of like real life, but you've got alien creatures on the bus, and a fairly funny gag.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This one's black and white again. But although, I don't know, this seems to have been done on some kind of like parchment paper or something.
Yeah, that's what the texture is.
Yeah.
And it looks like, as far as stylistically, this looks like one of the older stories that I was telling you I thought was in the group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably. Then do you have okay, well, I'm still sharing my screen, so if you have blank
I don't have
pages,
that one.
Okay.
The one that you have up there right now.
Yeah. So this one, there's no title on the page. I don't know what the table of contents says.
When I Die.
Okay.
A guest strip I did for the Flowfield Unity way back before Adam York Gregory became a serious artist.
Okay. And this one, it doesn't feel like it's meant to be funny. I'm not quite sure how to interpret this one. When I die, I don't want a fancy burial. Just stuff me in a cardboard box with nothing but the clothes on my back and the skulls of my enemies. Sounds like something a warrior would say.
Is that the only page?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I think the style of it is, once again, it's pretty cool. The black and white is very stark. You very clearly understand what the character is doing. I think the humor is like, well, is that all my current enemies? Like this, is he making a request that you go out and kill the people that were his enemies and put their heads inside the box with him?
Or maybe he already killed them when he was alive.
Or he already did it. Yeah, exactly. A spoiler on that one for sure.
So then we have an 8-pager. We're back to full color, or kind of full color. I mean, the coloring in this one is interesting. This is called Martian Honeys. And each character in this is all a certain color, but each character is a different color. But, their skin, their clothes, everything is that color, purple or orange or something. Mm-hmm. And these are college students basically going on spring break, except, again, it's in science fiction context where they're leaving Earth to go to Mars for spring break. And it's a girl and 3 guys, and the guys are talking about how they want to date Martian women. And as the table of contents says, this is talking about how the author has heard a lot of guys talk about Asian women. And we've heard all that kind of talk too, for sure. I remember hearing it before I ever came to, well, not before I ever came to Japan, but before I lived here. or kind of assumptions that Asian women were better at sex or something.
I picked that up in the story itself. I didn't read that part of the title, and that's one of the ones where I feel like maybe if he added that at the end of the story, rather than giving it away before I even read the story.
Yeah.
Because the subtext is there that you kind of get, oh, he's talking about Asian women.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was funny. When I read it the first time, I had not read the table of contents page yet.
Yeah, I didn't either.
And I guess I kind of got what it was about, but it didn't quite click until I read the table of contents. And then I read the story again, and I could see, oh yeah, just substitute Asian for Martian, and it all sounds familiar.
Yeah. So I felt like if that description was maybe after the last panel, it would have been like the author's commentary. That you get the punchline and you're not kind of led by the nose to what the discussion is about.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great story, though.
Yeah, it's great. And yeah, I mean, kind of humorous, but making a serious point. And, you know, sometimes it's the stereotyping. I mean, it has a grain of truth to it that in some, you know, some of these stereotypes of Asian women make a little sense, but that you know, some guys just want to generalize them to all young Asian women, and yeah, it's not really accurate.
Well, I guess you could apply the standards that they're using here to any kind of like foreign race that the American men aren't normally exposed to.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it is just, you know, the exotic.
Yeah.
And you know, I think the reverse also has applied, where like Japanese women think, you know, Western men are so much better than Japanese men.
No, but we are. No, don't put that in.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, that's completely accurate.
Yeah, the story illustrated, definitely all in the same style. The characters are very consistent throughout the story. Simplified and cartoonish, but once again, storytelling was pretty solid there.
Mm-hmm.
This artist is a pro. Does he do this for a living?
I don't think so. I mean, he potentially could, but I don't think he's doing comics for a living. I'm not quite sure why he's living in South Korea. How he ended up there, but
okay.
So then we have a one-pager in the table of contents. It's called 3-Panel Gag Comics, which is actually there are 3 different strips on here that each have titles: 3-Panel Gag Comics, 2-Panel Gag Comics, and 1-Panel Gag Comics. It's just talking about storytelling in different formats, and I liked the punchline on this one. You know, it goes right back to the beginning of deconstructing comics, the early days.
And this, because we did talk about Scott McCloud quite a bit.
Yep.
This was the one that I felt like he should cut out the description that he had in the table of contents.
Yeah, well, that's only the title of the first strip, and there are like 3 strips on here that each one has its own title, so the table of contents is not quite accurate there, or not quite complete.
You think that it's only talking about that first panel on page 27?
Well, because, you know, what's in the table of contents is the title of the first strip, 3-Panel Gag Comics. Mm-hmm. But the whole page is not 3-Panel Gag Comics, only a third of it is.
Yeah, and in the table of contents, he says only cartoonists will get this joke, and only a small percentage of them will find it funny. I guess I feel special because I thought it was hilarious.
Yes, I like this one very much. Then there's one of several pages called Merry Mess, which, again, it's transplanted into an alien world, This one is a little bit different style than some of the others. More cartoony. Well, there are no humans in this one. They're all some kind of alien race. Kind of cute characters. But it seems to be kind of parodying or commenting on holidays, maybe particularly Christmas, and kind of, some jokes about how we spend holidays.
This one has a little bit of Futurama reference in it again. Slurm is a drink from Futurama episode.
I see.
Who the Slurm are you? I like the style. I think it's really kind of interesting on the, the second page? Mm-hmm. The expressions that he puts on these characters are really, like, they're very emotive. Like arrogance and anger and all the other stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah, with just a few lines, he does give them various expressions.
Yeah. This one is blank in my book too.
It was on my phone also. Yes. So yeah, I don't know why that happens. He might want to check what happens to his PDF on Apple devices.
So what's interesting too is that I have the new MacBook, which has the same chip and OS as the iPad and some of the other the mobile devices. So I can't read these pages on my computer either.
Huh. Weird. Yeah. So iOS, it doesn't like iOS. I mean, on Mac OS, it's fine because I'm on a Mac here, but yeah, iOS doesn't like some of the pages. Anyway, so that one's amusing, and then there's a final page that has a couple of comics on it. One called Smooth, Clear, Glowing, where some skin cream doesn't work the way the woman expected it to. And then probably my favorite bit of the whole book is the very last strip.
I knew it was going to be your favorite.
Good old Johnny Constantine.
Yeah, I thought it was Constantine.
But
I was like,
British people say Constantine, but yeah, that's an ongoing discussion. But I guess Alan Moore intended it to be pronounced Constantine because he's British and the character's British, but Americans read it as Constantine.
Well, it's in the movies too as Constantine.
Okay, well they were American-made movies, right?
They were.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's John Constantine or Tyne, basically as Charlie Brown, and I really appreciated this one. So yeah, I mean, like I said, this is, I think, for $2, it's maybe more entertaining than a lot of $4 Marvel comics of a similar length. So yeah, I go to the link in the show notes and drop the $2 on this.
Yeah, I think it's worth it. You feel like you're contributing to an actual artist instead of to a big empire or whatever, and the stories are entertaining.
Yeah. And
then on the last page, you have I think this is humorous because it's like he's wrapping everything up. He put it in a sandwich. Now you have all the stories together. Now it can be consumed.
That same bird character has a toaster and some jam labeled je ne sais quoi, and he's made a toast sandwich of the jam and is about to eat it.
And the toaster's an Autobot.
Okay, you'll have to fill me in on that.
It's a Transformer. You see the sticker on the side?
Yeah, I see the sticker. I didn't recognize it. I don't know Transformers at all. But
what? Yeah. So that's the good guy symbol from the Transformers.
I see. Okay, well, we can see what his influences are then. Transformers and Futurama.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Overall, I thought it was a great read. I loved it. It's cool.
Yeah. So how's Zombie 2.0 coming?
It's not.
And that goes
I've
way
actually
back to the early days.
I'm going back and looked at it recently because I'm going through the stuff. We're going to be moving soon and getting rid of things that I don't need anymore. And when I looked at the artwork that I did, there's a lot of panels that are like super stiff, and I'm like, oh man, I definitely need to redo this. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I still get periodically tempted to work on Spider Hag again, but I think I'd have to drop all my podcasts to really get back into it. Also, I would have to adjust my process because, back when I was doing that, I used to, I would draw it big, and I guess what did I do? I think I photocopied it smaller then, and then I would scan it on the flatbed scanner at my office.
Oh.
And I don't have a flatbed scanner. I don't work in that office anymore. So I would either need to change my process or buy some equipment.
Yeah. Yeah, things have changed. I think it was a really common process for comic makers to oversize the drawings and the inking and all that kind of stuff, and then shrink it down on a photocopier, right?
Yeah, I remember, I think that was something Mulele suggested when we were doing our comics class. So that you could get more, I could get more detail into the drawing.
I don't know what the rest of the industry is doing right now. I know Mulele did it for a little while, but creating everything entirely in the digital realm is maybe, I just don't know. I don't have any exposure to it. So I don't know if that's really common now, which would be a huge difference between what you were doing and if they're doing it, artists are doing now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could just draw it all digitally. I tried that a long time ago, and I didn't like it, but I think it takes some time to get used to.
Well, I think the technology, since we were talking, we used to do it with graphics tablets that weren't screens, right? Like this.
Right.
But now you can get an iPad, you can get any other kind of tablet where you can draw directly on the screen with pressure sensitive stylus, and that the quality is really pretty good. And even like the Cintiq, where you plug it into your computer and acts as your monitor and your mouse. There are knockoff companies that are putting that stuff out for a tenth of the price of a Wacom. So I've seen some things where, like the car design industry, they're just drawing right inside of whatever the computer program is. And I think animators are doing the same thing. I just don't know about the comic industry.
Yeah.
At least it should be cheaper now if you did want to make a investment in that kind of technology.
Also, I would have to figure out where I was in the story because my notes got kind of... I lost my place in my notes. I have to kind of sift all through it again.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's wrap up the podcast. Thanks,
okay.
Brandon.
Sounds good.
See you next time. If you'd like us to critique your comic, send a PDF or a link to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it here on the show. This is Tim. Thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics.